Hi, hope everybody's doing well. Today, or in this lecture, we're going to talk about Chapter 10 of Global Strategic Management on global marketing. This is an interesting topic, and we'll try to do what we can, talk about marketing as we go along. It's a key component of what every business does, I'm sure a lot of you are marketing. You have a marketing emphasis in your majors, and are excited by the possibilities there are there. In a quote there on slide 2, in 1983, this guy named Theodore Levitt predicted the globalization of markets. And his arguments were based on the convergence of consumer needs and behaviors that would erase national differences and would lead to the standardization of marketing policies. Quite far-reaching. I think it's a good. 1983 came up with a pretty good concept there, the globalization of markets, and his reasoning behind that is relatively sound, with of course exceptions, but it's a nice trend. You see on this next slide, these are, no one needs to tell you what those are. You just take a look and you know those brands. Global branding, global marketing is heavily influenced by the power of these brands and these big names that you just see, you recognize, and that's what the people working for those companies in the marketing area or the ad agencies that they hire. Their whole point is to get you to take one look at that, Mercedes logo, and that's a Mercedes. That's how, and you have all those other related feelings about that product. Coca-Cola, that brand is probably the best known brand in the world, and so on. So those are the kind of brands that you know of as global brands that anywhere you go, almost anyone you speak with in the world, they'll know what that stands for. And then slide 3, you see that a global brand is when the product or service is represented across the world under its name. The top 10 global brand recognition rankings are very interesting. If you look at on the right from 2006 to then 10 and 16, you see in 2006 the number one brand was Microsoft, and then you go in 10 it became Google, and in 16 is Google, and probably is Google today as well. And then, but if you look at their list on 2006, you have Microsoft, General Electric, Coca-Cola, China Mobile, Marlboro, Walmart, Google, on down there, and then when you move over to 16, you see a major shift. What shift do you see? You see Google, Apple, Microsoft, AT&T, Facebook, Visa, Amazon, and what you're seeing the top 5, those are technology-based companies, those are digital-based companies, and that's even more so today, where you throw in, the big, the FAMGA, Facebook, Apple, Microsoft, Google, and Apple, or Apple and Amazon, I can't remember which A is A, but those 5 companies make up a big portion of the stock market, and they are the most recognizable names, and their valuation is extremely high. So you're seeing a trend, you can see it very well there on the brand names, going from physical things like the General Electric, Coca-Cola, Marlboro cigarettes, all the way to where the digital companies, the digital brands, are the ones that are most prominent and prevalent in the world today. Now, it's interesting to think about a company. Strategically, what companies do is they have different branding strategies for their corporate, global, and local purposes. And that is to say that you might be like you make a decision like, am I going to carry my brand name all across everywhere I go, at the headquarters, at the regional level, at the local levels, or do I break it up? And you'll see that and you'll see some examples there, like Heineken. They have, everyone knows Heineken here in the States, but they have 250 brands, and they're in 70 different countries. And their global brands are Heineken, Amstel, Sol, Desperados, and those Strongbow ciders, those kind of things. But then when they get even more local in certain countries, they'll go towards names like Tiger, Bintang, etc. It's very common. When you're in these different countries, you think, I'm drinking something, and you don't realize it's actually Heineken made, or it's made by Coca-Cola, or in other companies it's like Procter and Gamble. It makes so many different things, but they have different brand names for the same thing, or maybe with slight tweaks. It's local, and what that does is give it's a decision. Sometimes they think, in a certain country, I really would like to buy a Coke. I'm here in Laos, and I want a Coke because that makes me feel like I'm part of the, I'm just cool to drink that. Other times, those wherever they are, they like their local brand. The Coke has bought their local brand. They keep it pretty much the same. And the last thing they're going to do is put a name Coke on it because they would get fewer sales. So it's a decision made based on how much they can sell and their brand acceptance and how well they think they can do. In general, people want to stay with their brand as far as it goes, but then they're very happy to shift into more localized branding if it makes sense with a consumer base. You see the advantage of global branding there. The one big advantage is that when you roll out things, you can roll them out much quicker if you have a global brand and don't have to change everything, tweak everything. I don't know if any of you, if you've ever been involved with a branding change, it's unbelievable because you have to, even a merger acquisition, when you make that change, you have to, every single thing has to be, is affected. The colors you use, the business cards, the stationery, of course the signs on the wall, but it goes through so many different things. It's quite expensive and time consuming to make sure you've captured everything. So global branding allows for one quick thing, quicker, whereas when you break things up into pieces, you have to be sure that all those elements of your branding in your disparate markets actually have some sort of alignment and connection to what you're trying to do globally. It's a little more complex. The other thing, of course, is that you might hire a big brand marketing company to work with you all over, or you might hire a bunch of different ones with hiring locally for local purposes. Often you'll kind of hire, if you're a big company, you'll have a major one or two big marketing companies you work with, and they will have local subsidiaries or even local partners in different locations that are not owned by them, but they're so it works similarly, that you have. And the concept there is that you're not going to know everything sitting in your high-rise in New York that happens on the ground in Peru. So you may need to have overall direction, but then have somebody local that really knows the market and can help you, make sure that your product has acceptability with the local population. It says there in slide 7, global branding may ignore national differences in terms of culture and customer behavior, and that often happens. And usually companies will have multiple branding strategy, kind of coordinated, but well recognizing that different things are applicable in different countries that they need to be aware of and make sure that they catch. In advertising, it's a similar thing. You can have single agents. Advertising is it's a lot of fun, but it's different. Most of the time these days, advertising is wrapped up into the marketing effort. You rarely have it's a pure advertising company. Now, they exist, but it's much more an aspect of marketing these days where, you'll say a marketing company will say, I do all this for you, which will include advertising, public relations, the marketing, the digital marketing, the social awareness, all those kind of things, trying to wrap that up, your website development. Maybe they don't do it as well as across the board, but you're seeing less and less pure advertising companies, which is the fun part of the business. It's less common these days to see standalone advertising. A few big firms dominate the global market for advertising, and these are the ones. And you see, like these WPP, you think Young and Rubicon, Ogilvy, J. Walter Thompson. You might think of these are all different companies. They're not. They're owned by the same company. Omnicom owns BBDO, DDB, and TBW, and so the Publicis in France owns Saatchi & Saatchi, Leo Burnett. These big companies that made their way up and really did fantastic work in the 50s and 60s and the early 70s when advertising was, if you watch Mad Men, advertising was at its peak. They eventually were absorbed by a lot of these big companies, and they kept their name, their branding, just like for the same purpose as advertising and marketing. But there is there's been a consolidation of a lot of these companies, and they have. Look at the employees, 200,000 employees for some of these big global marketing advertising companies. Account management, it's pretty obvious. You can read that slide. And I just closing here with this last slide on, I think it's always, I always like to know about the people, the pioneers in the field, and the people who are really key in making a change. And you'll see this guy, David Ogilvy. He really is considered the father of advertising. If you're going to read a book on advertising. His book Confessions of an Advertising Man is just a must read. It's really a fantastic book to read. It's exciting, it's interesting, but you really see, a person that's behind so many of the great ads that or in history that have been considered tremendous ads. He came up with them, and he started quite late in life as an advertising guy from UK, moved to the US when I think he was probably late 30s, early 40s before he really started. But he became, he was basically considered the father of advertising for the way he was able to design advertising campaigns, attract attention, particularly in the heyday of advertising in the 50s and 60s when, things were booming, products weren't all over the place, and the way you reach people was through print and television ads. So if you're going to read a book, maybe you already have, if you're in marketing, then you certainly read about Ogilvy, and I encourage anyone that's interested in business and in advertising marketing to read that book. All right, well, thank you very much, and I hope this is good, and we'll be talking to you later. Thanks.